Hello, 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 and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing part 2 of the Remarried Empress recap. Okay. If you didn't watch part 1, you can click on the card above or go back on the channel and watch it. But we're getting right into it, starting with chapter 21. Okay, so chapter 21 starts off where chapter 20 left off, with Savichu asking Navier if she likes foreigners, like that's any of his business. And she rightfully tells him, hey, I was just talking to him about a trade agreement, sir. This is none of your business. And then she goes off to do her actual job at a budget meeting where they talk about the budget, they talk about inflation, and they talk about Rashta's mistress budget, since she now has to have a budget because she's the official mistress. But after that, it shows Navier walking with her guard back to her room and is approached by the same lady in waiting who left her after the ball and went to Rashta and told her all of the contents, like all the contents of the letter up until she left, and had this whole thing going on with Rashta and Henry and creating all of this big mess. That lady has the audacity to go and ask Navier to figure out what is going on between Viscount Latishu and Rashta because she's concerned. Like, be fucking for real. Anyways, she sees Rashta and dips right out. I don't know if Rashta saw her or not, but she approaches Navier and is like, hey, I have a question. And Navier's like, what is your question? And she's like, is Duchess Tuana someone of loose morals? If you don't know what that means, it's a very polite way of asking if someone is a hoe. So she's like, is she a lady of loose morals? And Navier's just like, listen, don't be asking me anything about that. That lady's fine. She interacts with men, she interacts with women, she interacts with everybody because she looks good. And she knows she looks good. And she's nice to be around. Unlike some of us in this conversation. But she tells her not to bring it up again, do not talk to her about this, and walks away. When she gets back to her room, she asks her lady in waiting if she'd heard any bad rumors about Duchess Tuana because sus. But she's like, no, I haven't heard anything, and Navier instructs her to let her know if anything comes up. Then we switch to Navier's birthday coming up. Sovishu coming to her, asking her when she would like to leave to go to that little villa that they're going to, for her birthday, because he got to do something. He got to do something. So he's taking her to the Imperial Villa. They have a flashback of them planting a tree when they were younger, all of that stuff. Kind of just giving us back flashes of their memories growing up together, which I really don't need. I don't like this man. But we get them solidifying the plan, her going back to her room, gifts arriving as her birthday comes, and then Queen flying a big red box over to her room. She opens it, chapter over. So episode 22 starts off with Navier opening the box and finding a cake. She starts eating the cake saying, oh my god, this tastes so good. Did he make it himself? The bird, Henry, is looking real proud of himself until she figures out that between the layers of the cake, there's a bunch of gems. And she's like, ooh, that's too much. That is a bit too much for a present. Henry, the bird, flies away, like, looking like it was crying, blah, blah, blah. So she decides the next day she's going to go and visit Henry under the guise of seeing if the bird is okay. She goes in, meets McKenna at the door. McKenna lets her in. Henry is fresh out the shower, but with clothes on, shirt half buttoned up, all of that. And she's like, ooh, I don't know where to look. But she talks to him about the gift, thanks him for the cake, and asks him if he made it himself. He then tells her that cooking and baking are his hobbies because did we need to like him any more than we already do? But, he doesn't want her to feel uncomfortable because in his empire, they export a lot of gems. And since most of the mines are owned by the crown, she shouldn't feel uncomfortable taking it because basically I got a lot of it to spend, a lot of it to waste, a lot of it to throw around. Don't feel bad, boo. So... After that, they discuss the rumors surrounding him, and he's just like, most of the rumors that are surrounding me are because of Duke Urgi, my friend. He's a real womanizer. Then she thinks back at, I haven't seen them interacting that much since Duke Urgi came to the castle. I've only heard of him interacting with Rashta. Henry goes on to tell her, hey, make sure you don't catch the eye of Duke Urgi because he is a womanizer, and even when you aren't doing anything, you are fine as hell, boo. And she's like, giggling, blushing, all of that. But, they end the conversation there, and we skip to the next day where she is on her way to the carriage to go to the imperial villa because it is the day before her birthday, when she had decided with Sovishu that she was gonna, they were gonna get up out there. She goes outside, sees Sovishu standing there with no luggage, and she's like, what is going on now? He's like, oh, I have an urgent issue that I need to address. And she's like, if it's that urgent that you can't go now, we could cancel. I don't mind. And he's like, no, you just go ahead. I'll meet you there. So she gets in there with her lady in waiting. I think Eliza is her name, the older one, Eliza. And Eliza is explaining to her, hey, you should try to mend your marriage on this trip because it's not easy for you to ask for a divorce without him getting it first. Like, you can't ask. He's the one that has to ask first because he's the emperor, which I personally think is stupid, but that's apparently how it went in that time. In this story, that is how it's going. But that's about it. That is the end of episode 22. On to the next one. Okay, so episode 23, we don't see the urgent business that kept Sovishu from leaving with Navir in the first place. What we do see is Rashta coming to see him and kissing his ass as soon as she stepped one foot through the door while he's getting dressed to go see his wife. She notices that there is a red box on the couch and she's asking him, hey, what's that red box for? And she's like, oh, it's my gift for the Empress. And he's like, all of this is happening while he's like walking out to the carriage. And she's like, why are you getting the Empress a gift? And he's like, I'm getting it for her birthday. She's like, oh, that's why you're going to the villa? I didn't know that it was her birthday. Probably because she didn't fucking tell you. She don't like you. But he's like, yeah, I told her that I was going to take her to the villa on her birthday. So that's where we're going. That's what we're doing. This bitch has the audacity to be like, oh my gosh, can I come? I want to go. So she was like, I don't think so. I don't think she would like that. And she's like, oh, but I think it would be good because, like, we're just one big happy family and I feel bad that I didn't know that it was her birthday. And I'm like, ma'am. Ma'am, family? Family? What do you mean? But anyways, he's just like, no, it's okay. I told her that I'd go. We can go another time, probably for your birthday. And she's just like, oh, well, okay. And she's sulking. He's asking her why she's sulking. And she's like, there isn't a woman alive that wouldn't be sulking if their lover was going to spend time alone with another woman. And I'm like, his wife? His wife? First of all, aren't you the one that just said, oh my God, I think of us as family. We are a family, so it should be okay if I come. Then you're going to be thinking of her like a love rival while a family. Ma'am. Aren't you the sister wife in your head? Are y'all not sister wives? So why would she not be thinking the same thing? This don't make no sense, honey. But anyways. Savichu gets in, he tells her, yeah, we'll do this for your birthday, whatever. Then she's like, oh my God, I think it will be better in a group, so we should just have a party and then spend some time alone after. And he's like, all right. And then they, see each other off, whatever. He goes, she waves him away. Then she goes inside and is like going back to her room and thinking in her head, oh, this is just like a classic marriage of convenience. And I'm like, who told you that? Who told you that their marriage was a marriage of convenience? Because from everything I've heard from Navir's internal dialogue, their marriage is one of, like, it was supposed to be arranged, but they're supposed to be in love. Like, they was acting all lovey-dovey when they were growing up. It didn't seem like a marriage of convenience before, but whatever. That's what she have in her head, that it's a marriage of convenience, and she's the only one that he actually loves. So, reading this over, making a little bit more sense. But anyways, who does she find waiting at her door for her to frolic her happy ass down them stairs? Viscount Ladishu. Yes. And then we switch right over to Navir waking up on her birthday alone because her husband has not gotten there yet. She decides that she's gonna, go sit on the couch, wait for him to come there because, he's probably coming and probably, do a little bit of light reading. She cracks open the book, starts reading, probably gets half a page in. And in walks Savishu asking her, oh, you even while you're on vacation, you're still reading. Yeah, probably because she has a job. She has a job. She knows what her job as the Empress is to do, which is to run the kingdom. The kingdom don't sleep just because you're on vacation. But anyways. He comes in, gives her the gift, and it is a necklace. So he's just like, let me help you put that on. She slides her hair to the side, exposing her neck, expecting him to be draping the necklace around her. And what does he do? He kisses her neck. And that is the end of the episode. But I want y'all to remember how this episode started versus how it ended. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay, I absolutely. We're gonna get into episode 24, but I absolutely forgot how many times I have looked at my phone and said, "Is this bitch fucking serious?" while reading this webtoon, because oh my gosh, if you take Rashta unseriously, she is so funny. The stuff that she says is so stupid. But anyways, let's get to the point where I actually cracked the fuck up. We start off with, left off with him trying to kiss on her neck. We start off with her turning around and him trying to lean in to actually kiss her, and she slams that box closed. And she's like, basically shutting him down. He says something about, sometimes it feels like you're less of a wife and more of a companion. And she's like, lovers, like people you're married to are your companions for life. And he's like, then what's the point of getting married when you could just have this companionship? And storms out to the room like a little baby. Her lady in waiting comes in, Eliza, and is just like, oh, did you guys have an argument? And she's just like, listen, he doesn't feel well. Could you send for a doctor? Also, I'd like to eat alone if I could. Thank you, please. So Eliza leaves. She goes to eat, finds out she doesn't have an appetite because of what just happened, and looks at her window and notices that Queen is knocking at the window. With the beak picking? Yeah, knocking at the window. She lets Queen in. The bird immediately hugs her head as a way of comforting her, and she's like, they're gushing over the bird, blah, blah, blah. They're having their little bird-human interactions, her not knowing that that man that is head over heels for her. But their interactions are cut short by Eliza running back in and telling her that the emperor has collapsed and he's been moved into an unoccupied room, and she sent for the doctor, and Navia is just like, okay, I'll be right there, get Queen some water and send word to the palace to get the emperor's actual doctor because we might need them. Skip right back to Rashta and Viscount Latishu having their conversation where he's essentially asking her for child support and she's just like, handing him rings because she ain't got no liquid assets, and he's like, okay, sure, I'll take it, they're pretty enough. But I heard that the emperor isn't feeling well. And no, he didn't say that. He's just like, I heard the emperor and the empress went to the imperial villa for her birthday. Aren't you concerned that they're gonna get back together? You not afraid that she go steal her husband back? And she basically gets her all riled up and leaves. So she goes, she's eating, talking to that same guy who was counseling her through signing the mistress contract thing. He's telling her about how the emperor isn't feeling well, and she's like, oh my gosh, should I go to the villa? Like, I want to go to the villa, let me go. And he's like, I do not have the juice to grant this access for you. Like, I cannot grant this request. If they need you, they will send for you. And then it skips to another scene, which is 4 days later, where Rashta is sitting on a swing. And Duke Urgi comes to her and is like, oh, how are you feeling? And how are you feeling since the emperor isn't feeling well? And she's just like, I don't know. It's been like 4 days. And in her head, she's wondering, I don't know if it's just been, 4 days that he's actually been ill, or they're just saying this so that they could spend some time together at this villa. So she's feeling insecure in her head. But outwardly, she's telling Duke Urgi, I feel so bad for the Empress because she's stuck at that villa taking care of her husband when I know that all he's thinking about is me, and I could not. I was dying. I was like, girl, be so fucking for real right now. And I wasn't the only one that was laughing because Duke Urgi also bursts out in laughter. And she's like, why are you laughing at me? And he's like, that was such an obvious lie, babe. Like, let's be serious right now. And so oh Jesus. So she's just like, I was being serious, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, listen, I've spent enough time around people and dealing with matters of the heart when I know when some's bullshit. And you are bullshitting me. Then he leans in close to her face and is just like, okay, so how would you react if I did this? And that's the end of the episode. Okay, episode 25. Navier is nursing Savishu to health, getting the ice cubes, the cold water, changing the towels on his forehead. And it's just like, how you feeling, blah, blah, blah. Then she asks, should I get Rashta? And I'm like, imagine me sitting down nursing my husband to health, asking if I can get him anything. A nice cold towel, some soup, your side hoe. Like, imagine. But he's just like, yeah, no, it's okay. And she's just like, are you sure? And in her head, she's thinking, if I could get this bitch to come over, then maybe I could go back to the castle and actually get some work done. Because I ain't getting no work done nursing this man to hell. And he's like, yeah, she's cute and all, but she's a lot. Like, she does a lot of cute stuff. The things she says are, fascinating, but she is too much. And I just want some peace and quiet. And I was like, oh, you want options. That's what you want. You want one lady for each season. You clearly. But anywho, Navier's like, all right, cool. So then they return a week later, and this bitch runs up to him while he's standing beside his wife, screaming out his name and hugging him, tears rolling down her face, looking over at Navier, and it's just like, oh my god, doing that little shy thing. And I'm like, ooh, girl. Navier and her ladies in waiting peace out, and she goes back to work, and it's just like, listen, the days went by as a blur, because on top of catching up with my work, I had to take on some of Shovishu's work while he was resting and relaxing, cooling and booling with his mistress. Then we switched to a party. They explained what a crystal house is on their property, and it was like the house where the mistresses used to be, but now it is a place where nobles can rent out for events. We see that Duchess Tuana has rented out a crystal house for a tea party. Her and Navier are talking, and then in walks Duke Urgi and Rashta. Duchess Tuana did not invite her, just invited the Duke. And she's like, oh, didn't know that you were coming. And the Duke's just like, oh, just wanted to, introduce her to a socialite like you, blah, blah, blah. And she can't, politely kick her out. So she just lets her stay. They're all talking, chit-chatting, whatever. And Rashta brings up the fact that it seems that a bunch of nobles tend to take lovers outside of their marriage, because they were talking about someone who was a mistress to Sobishu's dad and was wondering where they are now. And Duke Urgi was just like, yeah, she got kicked out. She didn't keep his attention for that long. She got tooted and booted. So she goes into this whole, oh my gosh, it looks like the nobles really do take lovers outside of their marriages quite often. It is no wonder that Duchess Tuana has 5 lovers outside of her marriage. And everybody, hell breaks loose. Hell breaks loose at the tea party. Everybody's like, what? Navier's looking at her like, girl, Duchess Tuana is dropping her fork on her plate, standing up, chewing her the fuck out rightfully, and ends the tea party. Because, ma'am, Duchess Tiana told Duke Urgi, listen, if you're gonna be inviting people to my parties, invite people with some fucking decorum. And I was like, absolutely, you are correct. But yeah, the Duchess pieces out and party's over. Rasha's just like, oh my god, I'm sorry, I didn't know. She knew damn well. And Navir is like, oh, this is not going away anytime soon. But that's the end of episode 25, y'all. Okay, episode 26, we see Rashta and the Duke plotting back in her room about if what Rashta said at the tea party was enough for people to, start the rumor mill about Duchess Tuana. He's just like, no, nah, we should do something else. But, we'll see what it is. And he's like, should I seduce the Empress? And Rashta's just like, sure. Like, okay, you could do that. But she's acting all cutesy, whatever. And he's like, listen, did I not tell you that shit don't work on me? And you can see her mask slipping a little, but she don't let it slip. He's just like, all right, cool. You think about what our next plan is. I'm going to go somewhere. You don't need to come. He leaves, goes directly to Navier, apparently was waiting 3 hours outside her office or her bedroom or something for her to come back. When she comes back, he starts talking to her about Henry and asking what's going on between her and Henry, because they don't move in the same social circles, but it seemed like they've been talking a lot. And I was like, it seemed like you know a lot about other people's business, sir. Relax. Then he's like, yeah, you probably should be careful around Henry because he's real two-faced. Like, did you know that he was planning to do this? Was about to get into it, but Sobishu interrupted them. Before I go into what's happened after that, there is a running theory that Duke Urgi is working with Henry. So this scene kind of confuses me a little bit because I'm like, why he doing that? But moving along, Sobishu interrupts them. Urgi sees him, excuses himself, and Sobishu is just like, yep, it's solidified in my mind now. You're definitely interested in foreigners. These are 3 different guys from 3 different places. And it's clear that you have a liking for foreigners and you just didn't know before because I was the only man that you were with. And she's like, what? And I was also like, what? Because all she was doing was having a conversation. I'm so confused. It's not like they were all up on each other either. They were a respectable distance away from each other having a conversation. But anyways, he's like, yeah, just because a man is saying good things doesn't make him a good man. So Navia's like, okay, so what makes a man a good man? Who would you consider a good man? And he's like, me? And her face in that panel was like, sure. Okay. But, you know, he basically tells her that she needs to be careful about how she's interacting with these men because it's not a good look, blah, 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 and walks away. And she, in her head, she's like, why is it that he could take Rashta as a lover, but it's a problem if I ever even think about taking a lover, if I think about talking to another man? And I'm like, girl, that is delusion. That is delusion, baby. That is what that is. But he goes back to his room, and we switch to him talking to Rashta and asking Rashta if she's friends with Duke Urgi, and she's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, so has Duke Urgi like said anything about Navia? Are they like friends? Are they close? And I'm like, so it's not a problem that Rashta is friends with Duke Urgi? Why? Because she's all up in your ass, head so far up that small intestine that she's sniffing shit for days. Like, is that why it's not a problem? But whatever. Whatever. She's like, yeah, no, they're not friends because Duke Urgi's my friend, so he wouldn't be Navia's friend. And he's like, oh, are you trying to take up for her? That's so cute. And I'm like, what the hell? What the hell? But he goes on to ask her why she's not wearing the ring that he gave her, and she didn't even realize that that ring was one of the rings that she gave to Latishu as child support. So she's like, oh my god, like, I'm so sorry. Are you mad at me? I gave it to a little servant. Like, I didn't know. And he's like, oh, no, that's fine. And she's like, oh, could you, like, get me a similar ring then? And he's like, yeah, no, I can't do that because the only other one is Navier's. And it ends there. So episode 27 starts off with Rashta and Viscount Latishu having a conversation in regards to the rings that Latishu had asked her about the last episode, asking him if he sold it, and he's just like, yeah, bitch, duh, I sold it. And she's like, you know what, the dynamics of this situation that we have going on is gonna have to change because if you do something, it's gonna blow back on me, and I'm not interested in that happening. So I'm gonna need you to show me why I should trust you in this partnership that we have going on. And he's like, what do you want? And she's like, I need you to dig up some dirt on Duchess Tijuana. So after that, she's in the hallway, runs into Navier, and is just like, hey, Your Majesty, you already have a really good friend in Henry, so I'm gonna need you to leave Duke Urgi alone because he's my only friend here, so I'm gonna need you to leave him alone since you already have one. And Navier's just like, girl, first of all, I'm not friends with that man. And secondly, I don't want nothing that you have because me and you, not the same. I am not desperate enough to be trying to steal nothing from you, baby. Mm-mm. Then she pieces out to the hallway and I'm like, period, sis. Then we switch to another scene with Sovishu basically asking Navier if he could borrow the other ring that he was talking about at the end of the last episode, if he could borrow the ring from her because he wants to lend it to someone who has, pretty rough hands, like injured hands. And she's like, oh, you seem to have, like, I know that you want this for Rashta, but if I recall properly, you already have a magical item in your possession. Like, why can't you lend it to her? He's just like, yeah, well, I kind of need yours because I don't know where that one is right now, but I would like to borrow yours. I'll definitely get it back. But how do you know that it was for Rashta? And she's just like, I doubt you'd lend it to any nobles, and if you can promise me that you're going to get the ring back, you're definitely giving it to somebody who's under your control. So that's her. And she's like, you know what? I'll lend you the ring under one condition. And this is where she Jedi mind tricks him. And he's like, what's the condition? And she's like, you lend me a magical item of your own so that I can lend it to someone. And he's like, who would you possibly be lending it to? And she's like, I mean, I told you last time we had a conversation that I'm finna get another lover that's local because you claim to be saying that I shouldn't be getting a lover that's foreign. So I'm gonna find one local like you, boo. I'm gonna be just like you, boo. And he's like, absolutely not. You dare to be lending something that is the property of the emperor to someone in this kingdom. And I'm like, are you not seeing what's happening? Like, are you stupid? Are you dumb? Because how are you not putting two and two together in your head? Like, how do you not hear the words coming out of your mouth and process them accordingly? Because you sound fucking stupid. But anyways, he gets upset and basically kiboshes the whole thing. And I'm like, she's getting what she wants. She don't have to lend you anything because you're letting your temper get in the way. But anyways, she goes outside and runs into Henry, who is holding the bird form McKenna, the little blue bird. And she starts talking to him about the birds and being like, oh my god, your birds have such a wide range of facial expressions because this one looks real angry and clean, always has like the best expressions. Can I hug this one? And he's like, no, this one looks like they're ready to go back. They want to go lie down and rest. So McKenna flies off and she changes the subject swiftly into her meeting with Duke Reggie and what they talked about last episode. And it's just like, we did get cut off, but it seems like he was saying something about you planning something. So what you planning? Fill me in, friend. And that's the end of the episode. Okay, so episode 28. We start off with Henry going back to talk to McKenna and being like, yo, I think that the feelings that I have for Navier run deeper than I thought they did. And he's like, what you mean by that? And he's like, I think I told her something that I shouldn't have. And McKenna's like, So then we switch over to Nadia calling her guard, and it's just like, hey, I want you to find out what Henry and Duke Reggie have been working on before the New Year's celebration, because I think that they were working on something. And she's kind of musing about how the Western Empire and the Western Kingdom and the Eastern Empire are rivals, with the Western Kingdom being the Eastern Empire's greatest rival, but there's nothing really going on between them, so she wants to see, like, what's the scoop. So then we go to Viscount Latashu and Rashta talking, and he basically came and gave Rashta some tea. However, he hands her a newspaper, shady ass, and it's just like, yeah, I found the tea, it's in here. So she's looking at it like, sir? And he's like, oh, I thought the Emperor would have taught you how to read. My bad. But then relays the tea to her. Basically, that Duchess Tiana was with this guy, but his older brother liked her and tried to, like, get with her. It seemed like they were pretty close. But when she ended up marrying the younger brother, then the older brother had relinquished his title and all of his money and everything and went to some form of, like, monastery or something. He, like, went into a little chapel, temple, something. And a couple months later after that, he unalived himself. And it turns out that she ended up having a baby 7 months after the unalivement. But the family was basically saying, hey, it was just a premature baby. It was a preemie, And after that, the print of the newspaper that ran the story went under. The whole company just went under. So Rashta's like, interesting. And Viscount Latashu is just like, oh, is that enough to get what you need? So she pulls out another gem to pay him, and it's just like, I want you to pay off some people from that temple, like surrounding the temple, to spread a rumor that they saw a very pretty noblewoman coming to visit the guy who unalived himself in the temple weeks before his unalivement. And Viscount Latashu is just like, bro, what is going on? You seem like you're trying to catbash the whole thing. You seem like you're trying to bring her under. And she's like, you know what, just do it. It's okay, just do it. So after he leaves, she's like thinking to herself, oh, this should be enough to get the rumors about me being a forced worker off my back, because I'm pretty sure that the guy who keeps looking at Duchess Tiana like she is the scum of the earth every time we go out is Duke Tiana. So I don't really know what's going on over there, but it should be enough to get the heat off me. And while the heat is off me, I need to figure out what is going on with the baby situation with Viscount Latashu, which I find so interesting because the two of them have kids and whatnot. So, you know what, whatever. Moving along. We then switch to Navier talking to Silvishu, and he's asking her about the ring and if she found it, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna be giving you my ring. So he's like, it's okay, I already found the ring that Rashta had given that servant girl. He had gotten somebody to go find something similar, and the person ended up finding the same ring at some auction. And he's like, you know what? It was such a wonderful thing of Rashta to do, to go and give that servant girl the ring. It's such a shame that she had to sell it, probably because of circumstance. So I'm going to get someone to go find out how much she sold it at auction for, so that I can reimburse her. I just don't want them to suffer. So I'm going to go find out some more information about the sale. And I'm like, you probably going to find out something that you're not supposed to, but go ahead. And that's the end of the episode. So episode 29 starts off with Savishu finding out that Rashta had given the ring to Viscount Ladishu because he found out that Viscount Ladishu is the one that had sold it at the auction. So he goes to Rashta and is asking, like, who did you give the ring? So she's like, oh, did he find out? So she lied and said that she had given him one ring and a servant girl another. She can't really keep track because they all look the same. So she's like, why would you give him a ring? And she's like, oh, I gave it to him because I was so grateful that he would lie on my behalf. And he's like, he didn't do that on your behalf. He did it because I ordered him to. And she's like, oh, I don't know. Basically playing stupid and throwing Viscount Ladishu under the bus. So then Savishu is just like, you know what? I am just going to have someone come and check your jewelry box every day and manage all of the allowances that you get for like dresses and jewelry and stuff like that. It's just until you can manage on your own. So basically distrusting her. Then he tells her, hey, I believe you because you're denying it so firmly, but if he's blackmailing you with something, you need to let me know. So she's like, he has nothing to blackmail me over, blah, blah, blah. But this is after she was contemplating, sending somebody over there to confirm if the baby that he's taking care of is hers or another one. Then we switch over to Navir, who is at one of the magic schools in the Eastern Empire so that she can visit a child that she basically sponsors. So she's there talking to the headmaster, looking at graduates from the school. Grand Duke Kaufman is one, this other random is one, and then there's an empty frame. So she's like, who's this empty frame for? They're just like, oh, someone who came here on an exchange program, but they weren't really enrolled, so I don't need to have them in there. I don't need to have their picture. But they did say if someone came to ask, I should tell them, so it was Henry. So she's like, interesting. So she leaves and runs into Henry and McKenna coming. She asks Henry, what is he doing here? He's like, oh, the headmaster asked me to come here, but since I'm already here and we ran into each other, we should go eat. She's super suspicious because she still thinks that he's plotting something. So while they're eating, she's trying to fish for some answers, asking him, mages have a specialty. What is your specialty? All of that. They're talking about all of these things. So that's how that ended. New day, new hairstyle. But anyways, let's get back to it. Episode 30 continues with the meal between Navia and Henry. They're basically talking and she's asking him, oh, what is your specialty of magic? And he's just like, oh, my specialty is flying. And she's like, oh, you should take me on a flight someday. And he's like, no, can't do that, sorry. And then it switches to, the events of what happened at Duke Urgy. That's what his name is? Duke Urgy? Yeah, Duke Urgy's party. He rented out a theater and then found some time to sneak off to the balcony to talk to Duchess Tiana. So Nadia is, getting bathed by her ladies in waiting who are telling her, hey, this is the tea of what happened. So apparently some nobles saw Duke Urgy and Duchess Tiana outside talking. Then they came back inside and they had this little squabble that led Duchess Tiana to smacking Duke Urgy across the face. Then that led to one of Duke Urgy's old fangs coming and dragging her by her weave, y'all. Dragging her by her hair. And I was like, ooh, that's tea. That is tea. But we switch over from there to Navir, going out, wandering around the halls, and runs into Rashta, who seems to be everywhere. That girl is all over the place. But anyways, she runs into Rashta, who talks to her about, when she's going to start getting money as a mistress, like an allowance. And she tells her, and then Rashta lets her know that Savishu wants that other guy to be taking care of the funds until Rashta can manage them herself, quote, quote. So Navi was just like, okay, why are you telling me that? And she's like, I was thinking maybe you could give me the allowance on my own, like you could just give it straight to me. And she's like, listen, I can't do that. It is Savishu's responsibility to take care of you. He's the one that brought you in. I cannot be intervening on matters between both of you. You need to go talk to him. Then Rashta goes back, we switch to her talking to Duke Urgy and bitching and complaining about how Navir hates her and she's so mean to her and blah, blah, blah. And Duke Urgy's just like, no, she just acts like an empress. Like, she behaves that cold because that's how she needs to be as the empress. She can't really get too close to people because of her status and position. But then he segues right into offering Rashta a loan. And it's just like, listen, I will not take this loan back. Like, I'm not going to ask you back for the money for the next 5 years. You can have it, do whatever you want with it, blah, blah, blah. But there is a catch. And that is where so episode 31 starts off with the Duke letting Rashta know exactly what his terms are, which is that she tell him what she needs the money for, because obviously she needs it for something shady if she doesn't want the emperor to know that she's getting it. So she tells him, but we don't know because it cuts off as she, starts with, oh, the truth is blah, blah, blah. So then we get into Navia arranging things for a public ball, which is a ball that is usually held to hold the moral of the public, get them closer to the empire or whatever. She wanted to be a masquerade ball because those were the balls that were popular when Sabishu's father was in power. So she's like, yeah, let's make it a masquerade ball. She notices Rashta and then makes like an observation out loud that Rashta has been like she's been seeing her around way too often for it to be a coincidence. And the guy who she's playing ball with is just like, oh, it's known that Rashta just wanders around the palace, basically saying she ain't got nothing else to do. So what else does she have to do other than wander around? So Navier dismisses him, takes her guard, and goes over to Rashta and essentially tells her to stop fucking following her all over the place. It's really fucking creepy. So Rashta is just like, oh, I just want to learn etiquette from you because Duke Urdu said that you're a model empress. So I just want to learn how to do things like you. And Navier's like, why do you want to do that? And I'm also confused. Why would you want to do that if you're not coming for her spot? I'm confused, but she's like, oh, you know, I'm not a noble, blah, blah, blah. So I need to get try to, learn from you because I can only learn so much from the Baron, blah, blah, blah. So Navier's like, listen, I can't tell you what to do, but I can have my guards remove you if I notice you following me around. So either be very, very discreet to the point where I can't see you or stop following me around. Then she leaves. Then, y'all, we have the famous moment with the dresses. It comes to the time for the masquerade ball. Navier is walking with her ladies in waiting, enters the room, sees Rashta in a very, very similar dress to hers. Very, very similar dress. Same color, very similar design. Rashta makes this whole big thing about how Navier was copying her, and Navier is just like, bro, is this what you meant by you wanted to be more like me? Because this is weird. And Rashta's just like, oh, whatever I said before doesn't have anything to do with you copying me now, making this whole fuss over it. And Navier's just like, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to open both of us up to rumors and ridicule by copying what you wear? That doesn't make any sense. And then she walks past, goes and sits down. Sabishu comes in, like amid everybody starting to whisper about the foolishness that is going on. He kind of walks ish past Rashta, but she's following behind him like a puppy, like a sad lost puppy, trailing behind him. And somebody's like talking to him saying, hey, this is what's happening, giving him the rundown. He's like, oh, I'm the one that told Navier to wear the red dress. And then it ends there with Navier hearing him because he was in earshot. So, weird turn of events. Episode 32. Sabishu goes up to Navier, kisses her on the cheek, and it's just like, oh, thank you for, respecting my wishes and wearing the color that I wanted you to wear. And she's just like, oh, yeah, no problem. Rashta walks away, completely walks away after this. And then everybody else that was surrounding them walks away. And then they start talking about, like, why he would do that. And he's like, oh, well, you are the Empress. You represent the Eastern Empire. So how you are displayed to the public is how the imperial family is displayed to the public. And I'm like, now is when you're realizing this? Now. Not with all of the embarrassing things you've been doing for 31 chapters. Now. Okay. So then they start bickering and whatever. And get distracted a little by the fact that Rashta decided to go up on stage and start dancing. Everybody's crowding around her, cheering, blah, blah, blah. Sabishu's staring at her. Navier is just like, oh, do you want to go dance with her? Because it looked like you want to go dance with her, so go dance. And I was like, listen, that is my level of petty with an argument. But he's like, no, not really. Like, why would you say that? They start bickering again. He asks her if she learned how to stop a conversation, how to like end an argument from his mom. And I'm like, bro, you are literally turning into your father. And you hate your father. But anyways, they continue bickering. Rashta finishes dancing, comes down, notices that they're talking, comments like, oh, he must be talking to her about matters of the state, because in her head, he couldn't possibly be talking to her about anything else other than running the empire because he doesn't love her. So he wouldn't be talking to her about literally anything else. So she's like, you know what? He doesn't talk to me about that, but whatever. Then she spots Duke Tuana and goes and talks to him. Navier and Sabishu notices that she's over there talking to him. Sabishu doesn't really change any expression. Navier just like, he's not jealous. But then Henry comes up to, greet Navier, blah, blah, blah. Sabishu looks, starts getting jealous. They start bickering again. Changes scene to 4 days later where Navier's ladies in waiting come to her and is just like, oh my gosh, you would not believe what just happened. Laura runs in and is just like, hey, Duke Tiana just told Duchess Tiana that he wants a divorce. Navier's just like, what the hell? Then she remembers that Rashta was talking to Duke Tiana at the event 4 days ago. Laura is explaining to her what happened, blah, 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 and that it's not really about the baby because the whole rumor going around is that the baby is the Duke's older or younger brother's baby, and then he, got unalived, etc. And the Duke's father doesn't really care because either way it would be a grandson, so he not really concerned about the paternity of the child. But something's going on. The Duke says he wants a divorce. Navia is just like, oh, does it have anything to do with Rashta? Because she's thinking, if it got something to do with Rashta, then this means that Rashta now has the ability to manipulate high society, and that is not a good thing. So she tasked one of her ladies in waiting to find out if it's about Rashta. And, how the Duchess responded. She don't want a divorce. She's adamantly against it, etc. 4 days after that, somebody else runs in, and is just like, oh my gosh, you would not believe what happened. And it said something about, I think it was a duke or something, or a baron. Who was it? A viscount. Viscount Landry went and stabbed Rashta. And I was like, oh gosh, it's popping off. It is popping off. Next episode. Episode 33, y'all. Everything gets worse. I'm just letting you know, it just continually gets worse after this. Okay, so they continue telling Navier the tea about what happened with Rashta and Viscount Landry. So apparently he's the one that was in love with Duchess Tuana and found out that maybe Rashta was the one that started spreading rumors, and went over to her room, goes inside, Rashta lets him in. Duke Urgy hears some screaming, thought he smelled blood, goes inside, finds Viscount Landry with a knife and Rashta on the floor bleeding from her, I don't know where, somewhere in her upper body. She's bleeding from somewhere, but her life is not in danger, whatever. We see a clip of Savishu and Duke Urgy sitting there beside Rashta and the doctor, and Savishu goes and thanks Duke Urgy for, saving her, and the Duke noted, like, why is he not concerned about some guy in his lover's room so late? But whatever. He, goes. Savishu notices that the doctor is, pressing on the area near Rashta's wound, and he comments on it, like, why, are you sure you should be pressing on it like that? He's just like, I knew it. Congratulations, she's pregnant. Mance goes immediately over to Navier, because it switches right over to her getting ready, and they announce his arrival, and she's just like, oh, this early in the morning? He comes in, he's just like, Rashta's pregnant, it's gonna be my first child. I don't expect you to congratulate me, but I do expect you to raise her allowance to fit those of mistresses who have given birth to children. Navier's just like, in her head, I'm sure she's just like, yeah, I'm not going to congratulate you. Can't in good faith do that, but, I will do the other stuff. Then he, walks out. Navier turns around, sees Queen looking shook as hell. The bird looks shocked, staring right at her. Then flies over to her and gives her a hug, and she's just like, oh, thank you, blah, blah, blah. Then a little bit later, Prince Henry comes over and is just like, oh, I just wanted to comfort you, blah, blah, blah. Then they sit down, have tea, talk about nothing important really, and then it switches to later on in the day with Duchess Tuana coming in and being like, I have a favor to ask of you, please spare Viscount Landry's life, and it ends there. Hey y'all, episode 34, Navier and Duchess Tuana is talking, and they're kind of discussing the fact that it looks like Viscount Landry is going to be executed without a trial because, technically, so she's going to go for treason because Rashta is pregnant. And they're talking, blah, blah, blah. Navier's just like, I'm going to go talk to him after they interrogate him, etc. She goes down. We see her going down to the dungeon to go and talk to him. And they're discussing, what's going on, trying to figure out what's happening. She informs him that he's probably going to be executed without a trial because Rashta is pregnant. And he's just like, oh my God, I didn't know she was pregnant. Freaking out, blah, blah, blah. Then she asks him to explain what exactly is happening. So he said he went to go talk to Rashta because he found some information that proved that she was the one that started the baseless rumors against Duchess Tuana and is trying to bring her down. And she started all of these rumors on purpose. But he's saying, oh, in hindsight, I probably should have just told people instead of going to talk to her. But he was blinded by rage because Rashta was essentially trying to weasel her way out of taking responsibility for her actions. Then he explains to Navier how he found all of this information out about him going to the village that Rashta had told Viscount Ladishu to go to and start spreading the rumor about Duchess Tuana and Lord Marquis, which is her husband's brother, essentially. So he went, spoke to the people, threw in a couple of trick questions, and it seemed like everybody was reading off the same script. They'd heard the same thing. Then he started showing people portraits of nobles, and then everybody pointed to Viscount Ladishu as a person who paid them off to say the stuff. So he was like, I knew that it had to do with Rashta because Viscount Ladishu, before getting himself involved with Rashta, was not widely accepted by the nobles, so it had to have been her doing, him and hers doing, essentially. So Navia is just like, do you have like any solid written down evidence of this? And he's like, yeah, it's at home in my drawer in my study. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna grab it. Let me know if you need anything from your house. I'll give it to your butler can give it to you. Navia goes, retrieves the stuff. Well, I don't know if she goes and retrieves it, but the next panel is her sitting in her room reading the stuff. And she's like finding some stuff in there that he obviously would have had to investigate to find out. Like, for instance, Rashta giving Viscount Ladishu the ring and him not knowing that Savishu had even given Rashta the ring in the first place. So all of these different things. Then she goes to Savishu and essentially talks to him about the trial and whatever. And he's just like, if you're here to argue with me about executing this man who put my child at risk, please go somewhere else. Which, I'm not gonna lie, I can't really blame him for this one. I can't blame him for this one. But Nadia is just like, you know what? Since you don't want to talk about this, you can do whatever you want to do with Viscount Landre. Deal with that how you feel like dealing with it. I will deal with Rashta how I feel like dealing with it. It ends there. Okay, so episode 35, the conversation continues, and Savishu is just like, what do you mean? And Navia is just like, listen, essentially, I have information on all of the stuff that Rashta has been getting up to, and it is quite illegal to purposefully, falsely tarnish the name of a noble. It does very much carry a punishment of something about being tied up in lashings. I don't know, child. But they make an agreement that Savishu is going to commute Viscount Landry's sentence, and instead of executing him, just banish him. But in exchange, Navier has to give him the evidence. So that is what happens. Navier goes back to her room. She's there chilling, gets a letter from Queen, starts reading the letter from Henry, essentially, talking about how he may have to go back to the Western Kingdom because his brother is quite ill and his condition is getting worse and all of that. We also find out in the letter that McKenna is very much his cousin. So there's that. And, essentially outlining two options for revenge. You could take on a high-born, very good-looking, blah, blah, blah lover, or you could ask Henry for help. Basically telling her that he is here for her even when he is in the Western Kingdom. If she needs him, he will come. Then he appears. They go on a little walk. They have some, little banter. She asks about his brother. They have chats. Then as soon as they get to the crystal building thing, he's just like, oh, if I go back to the kingdom, will you miss me? So she's like, yeah, I will, blah, blah, blah. Then it switches over to Savishu and Rashta sitting, chatting, talking about the fact that she's pregnant and the baby. And he's just like, anything you need, just ask, I'll get it for you. And she's just like, are you sure? Then she has a flashback to Viscount Ladishu, Viscount Ladishu's son, and basically him telling her, when she found out she was pregnant with his baby, him telling her that, yeah, I love you, but I'm not willing to change my life for you. She gets emotional, starts hugging him, blah, blah, blah. And I really think this is what she's been trying to get this whole time. Just somebody who will fight for her or whatever. But listen, I'm up to date on this webtoon. Okay? Those motives I can see have definitely evolved and changed into something completely different and a lot worse. But yeah, they eventually talk, whatever. They're there, hugging, whatever. Switches to the last panel in this episode, which is Viscount Duke Urgy coming back. There's so many titles for all of these characters, my god. Duke Urgy comes back from Remarried and essentially tells her that, yes, I do think that the baby that Viscount Ladishu is taking care of right now is indeed your child, because she did ask him to look into that for her. And that's the end of that episode. So episode 36 starts off with Duke Urgy, continuing, being like, yeah, this is your child. Rashtra's just like, are you sure? Did you get a maternity test from the temple? And he's like, why would I need to do that? The baby looked just like you. The baby is your twin. It's your twin in a ma'am. So she's like, okay, fine. So they kind of discuss. Duke Urgy is just like, oh, how much money do you need? She's like, oh, can you just lend me 1,000? He's just like, I'll lend you 10,000. It's fine. But I think you should really get yourself out of this situation because you can't let this man keep manipulating you forever. So she's like, do you have any suggestions on how I could do that? He's like, nope, I don't. But you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. So then, oh my goodness. Then he's just like, are you not curious if this is a boy or a girl? Question mark? But anyways, then it goes on to Navier's ladies in waiting, telling her all of the tea from what's happening, from Savishu gifting Rashta a armchair for congratulations for, being pregnant, I guess. Viscount Landry leaving, Duchess and Duke Tijuana getting a divorce and having to go to court to split up assets, all of that. They talk about all of it. So then she finds a love potion that someone had gifted her for her birthday. So Laura's like, you're not gonna use that? She's like, I mean, I don't really have any use for it, but I don't want to throw it away because it's a gift. So Laura's like, you should use it on the Emperor. And I'm like, I mean, I don't really like him as a person, so I wouldn't suggest that, but that is your husband. So she's like laying down, thinking about it, looking at the potion, and it's just like, did someone feel sorry for me because someone stole my husband? That's why they gave me this potion. And I thought that was so funny. But anyways, it switches off to Navier talking to Grand Duke Hoffman about the trade agreement, and then brings up the love potion because, you know, his country is very into magic and blah blah blah, and he's like really good at magic, and she saw that he went to the magic school and all of that. So he's like, let me test it. First, he sniffs it and whatever, and it's just like, yeah, I think this will give you the desired effect. It's not necessarily going to make you fall in love, but it's going to give you the side effects like elevated heart rate and all of that. I have an antidote, so I could test it on my own. So he drinks the potion, some of the potion, as soon as Sobishu walks in, then turns around, refuses to face either of them. And Sobishu is just like addressing him, and he's like not turning around. Navier is making excuses for him. Sobishu gets real jealous and petty and weird and disgusting, and it's just they're smirking, and it's just like, oh, were you guys doing something inappropriate? Is it because you were kissing before I came in? Like, he can't turn around and look me in the eye? Like, are his lips swollen from kissing? And then forces that man to turn around and just sees him bawling, just like water flying down his face, just blushing. The man's red. And if you know Grand Duke Kaufman, that man is brown. So, child, ooh, end of that chapter. Episode 37 is going to be a quick one. So essentially the Grand Duke pretends that he actually fell in love with Sobishu and, you know, flirted with him, making his little fragile masculinity get real uncomfortable, and he retreats from the room. Then he explains to Navier what happened and basically like sends her away because he's just like, I can't. All I can think about is how beautiful you are, your lips, your neck, your eyes, all of that. So she leaves. The next day, she sends a maid to go check how he's doing, and he comes back dressed to the nines, honey, to come visit her. Then they talk, you know, for a little bit. He admits that he was the one that sent the love potion to her in the first place because he was so frustrated with her situation and he didn't want to see her suffer because of how her husband's treating her with Rashtra. And I'm like, this is so embarrassing. Like, not him sending the love potion, but the fact that people, foreign officials, are coming to your country for a celebration, staying to deal with like trade agreements and whatever, and observing how horribly you're treating your wife. Just absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, they agree that, you know, he took antidote, it didn't work for him, so they're just gonna try to find a way to deal with it until it's time for him to go back home. She goes and she's having like an audience with people with Sobishu. Like, one person was performing or something, and then Sobishu mentioned like, oh, are you done pulling pranks on me with Grand Duke Kaufman, blah blah blah. It's obvious that he was blushing when he saw you. And Navier claps back and is just like, it is very clear that it was when you guys' eyes met is when the blushing started. So don't try pulling me into all of this. And then runs away. So then she goes out, she's walking. Henry comes up to her with like a folded document and it's just like, oh, I need your advice on this. Can you walk with me and help me? So she's like, sure. She opens it. It's blank. It's just an excuse for him to talk to her. They're walking, talking, run into Grand Duke Kaufman. He buffs up on Henry and it's just like, don't stand so close to her. That's the end. Episode 38 is also a really quick one. So Henry and Grand Duke Kaufman are just there squabbling over Navier, etc. Then McKenna comes and tells Henry that there is something, like an urgent matter that he needs to deal with. So he like kisses Navier's hand, direct eye contact with Grand Duke Kaufman, and leaves. So then Navier and Grand Duke Kaufman talk about what just happened and then move into talking about how they're going to be able to like break the effects of the love potion. But then Sobishu interrupts them and is just like, oh, so which one do you prefer, Henry or Grand Duke Kaufman? Mind you, Kaufman is standing right beside her. For all of the events I'm about to tell you, Grand Duke Kaufman is right there. Regardless of whether or not he's flirting with your wife or whatever, regardless of what you just saw, he's still a foreign official here as a representative from another country. So, continuing, he's just like, oh, it seems that you really, really love these foreigners. It was such a sight to behold to see you arguing with the foreigners. You need to be careful of how you act at a time like this. And she's like, what do you mean? You mean because your mistress is pregnant? Like, I don't understand. It might be great news for you, but it's not great news for me. So he's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not a mistress's baby. It's the imperial family's baby. Like, a baby of mine is a baby of yours. And she's like, I don't know what's not clicking, sir. Her child is not my child. Like, this don't have nothing to do with me. Like, I don't understand what you mean by that. So he's like, are you such a cold person that you would hate innocent child just because you dislike the mother and blah blah blah. And I'm like, be so fucking for real right now, Savishu. Be so entirely fucking for real. But anyways, Grand Duke Kaufman, very tired of hearing this man shouting at his wife right in front of him. First of all, absolutely out of bounds in front of somebody. Like, you always claim that you need to make sure you keep up appearances with her as the, you know, representative of the imperial family or whatever, but you're out here shouting, screaming at her because she's walking and talking with somebody else who may find her attractive. Like, I don't understand. If you can't handle dating a bad bitch, don't date a bad bitch. Okay? Message of the century. Like, the fuck? But Grand Duke Kaufman did everything that we all wanted to do to him, and he socked him right in the face, punched him square in his cheek. Almost there, y'all. Episode 39. I completely forgot to recap. At the end of episode 38, Henry's reading the letter that McKenna pulled him aside for, and it's basically saying that his brother is in critical condition. So we start with that again in episode 39, and he basically says something like, oh, if I ask for a hand in marriage, do you think she'll say yes? And McKenna is just like, what did you say? And he's like, nothing. And he's like in despair, basically, because his brother is probably finna kick the bucket soon. So then we go back to the confrontation between Duke Urgi and Savishu. Duke Urgi gets a punch in. Savishu tries to punch. Navier tries to break them apart. The guards come, surround Duke Urgi. He's just like, Navier's yelling to lower their swords. They don't lower them. Savishu finally tells them to lower their swords. They lower them. Grand Duke Kaufman is just like, hey, I am skilled in magic. I could take y'all on from here. So then Savishu is just like, you know what, from your reaction, it's very clear that you have feelings for the Empress. And Grand Duke Kaufman is just like, no, it's just that I do not want to be sitting down here having you disrespect the woman that you are married to. Like, this is your wife. You are disrespecting her. So Savishu is just like, oh, so is it uncommon where you're from that men who are stuck in a marriage of convenience cannot, like, step out of the marriage and take lovers? So I'm like, okay. This is where I think that he actually told Rashta, like, actually convinced her that he is not in love with Navier. So this is where I'm like, okay, so this girl really thinks that you don't have no love for your wife, because this is what you've been telling her clearly since you've met her. But whatever. He's just like, you know what, I'll chalk it up to cultural differences, so I won't have you thrown in jail, but we are going to reconsider this trade agreement. Then now, like, he leaves with the guards. Navier is trying to apologize to Grand Duke Kaufman. He's just like, no, it's okay, it's because I can't control my emotions, that's why this is happening. He excuses himself, leaves. Navier goes back to her room. Essentially, her ladies in waiting, like, come to her, talk to her. Then it transitions into, like, her laying down in bed thinking about everything that happened, like something that Laura said when she relayed the information on what just happened, where it's a shame that Grand Duke Kaufman isn't in love with Navier, because maybe if he was actually, then Savishu would see her worth. And I was like, damn, that is rough. But anyways, then she's just like, oh, I feel bad for, you know, using the Grand Duke for this, blah, 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 blah. Then Queen comes, essentially no, nothing, just comes, give her a sad look, hug her, flies away. Then the next day she goes and talks to Savishu, and he's just like, oh, you've come to see me? You've only come to see me during the day when you have something to talk about, because why the hell else would she come and talk to you? Y'all have work to do. What the fuck? Anyways, so she tries to talk him out of backing out of the trade agreement, and he's just like, why? Why would I do that? Like, is it because it's going to benefit, are you trying to stay in this trade agreement because it's going to benefit the empire, or because it's going to benefit you? And she's like, what the hell are you even talking about? Like, even if I was going to take a lover, you've already taken a lover and brought her to every single fucking palace event that we've had since she came here. And he's like, oh, well, like, I don't understand why you don't understand. And she's like, I don't understand why you are so invested in my love life. You need to be worried about Rashta's love life, sir. Like, that's what you need to be worried about. Since you don't care about me, why are you so invested in my love life? And I'm like, girl, that's because he actually like you. I think he just has Rashta there because he knows that you're a strong woman and you're independent and you can do whatever you want. He needs somebody to kiss his ass and fluff his ego. And that's what Rashta's there for. Then he like bangs on the table, starts shouting at her, a mistress is a mistress, but you're the empress. Then we see a flash of Rashta outside hugging a teddy bear. And I'm like, that is so creepy. It is so creepy. Like, him taking a mistress and everything and treating Rashta how he treats her and all of that it's bad. But the fact that Rashta's imagery throughout these early chapters is her being like super duper innocent and blah blah blah, and her hugging teddy bears and whatever, childlike image is so creepy. It is so creepy because that is a grown man. He's 100% over 18. He may be in his mid to late 20s, maybe early 30s. But that is so creepy, man. Ugh, I hate it. But that's the end of episode 39. There, episode 40, y'all. So it starts off with Rashta like standing at the door, gripping this goddamn teddy bear, and is listening like, oh, are they arguing? So then she listens in and hears the part where he's just like, a mistress is a mistress, but you're the empress. So then it switches to her sitting in her room with the lady in waiting that she stole from Navier, asking her if there's ever been a scenario where an imperial mistress has been loved by the emperor until death. And she's like, girl, no, the fuck. So then she just like, she sees the look on her face and is like, you know what? It's not that bad. Like, the baby that you're having will ensure that you have ties to the empire for essentially its entire life. And she's just like, oh, I don't want to use my baby like that, blah, blah, blah. Then it's announced that Viscount Latashu is there to see her. So they talk. I forgot to mention it. It's either last chapter or the chapter before. I think it was 2 chapters ago. It is mentioned that he is trying to buy a house close to the imperial palace, essentially. And Navier was thinking, oh, is it because he's blackmailing Rashta? You know what? If he is, it's none of my damn business. But then he comes in blackmailing Rashta for money to buy the house. So she basically, I think it was 500,000 crans, which I'm assuming is $500,000 to buy the house. And she's like, why the hell would I be giving you so much to buy a damn house that you'll be living in by yourself? And he's like, I'm not going to be living in the house by myself. I'm bringing your son with me. And she's like, why would you be bringing him with you? And Viscount Latashu was just like, girl, you don't want to save a couple coins for your child, blah, blah, blah. Like, I understand that he's blackmailing her, but damn, she acting like it's a plague that her kid finna be so close to her. But whatever. It switches over to Navier, essentially just there. She gets visited by Henry, and they're there talking, walking. He gives her his jacket because he notices that she's cold, and they're there chatting, talking about how he has to go back to his empire, but he wants to still be pen pals. And she's like, oh, will I be seeing Queen? He's like, no, Queen actually plays a pivotal role in our kingdom, so I'll be sending the bluebird with the letters at this time. So they separate. She goes back. Her ladies in waiting tell her that Duchess Tiana is leaving the kingdom and gave her a letter for her. So she read the letter basically saying that she's going to leave, go to visit. She's going to go and find Viscount Landry because he put himself in danger to essentially help her. So it's the least she could do, and if Navier could burn the letter after. I'm also forgetting to say that the ladies in waiting told her that essentially the courts ruled in the Duke's favor because of the stuff that happened between Viscount Landry and Rashta. So the Duchess really doesn't have anything to stay there other than her child, which isn't really mentioned that much. So I don't know what's going on with that storyline because I can't remember, and I'm up to date with this, I can't remember anybody mentioning her child for... And we're at like 130 something chapters. Anyways, whatever. So yeah, essentially Navier burns a letter, and then she remembers Henry saying, oh, are you cold? And then she like recounts on the fact that Queen, Henry, and Duchess Tion are leaving. All of her friends are leaving. She's feeling real cold now. And that is the end of episode 40. I might do broad breakdowns for this because this 20 episode thing takes so long to recap. But let me know if you like the 20 episode format or if you're okay with me just like breaking it down so that we can catch up faster, because there's other things that I would like to be talking about as well. Other webtoons, some animes, different stuff. So I'll see y'all in the next one. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that.